Hello, hello. Welcome back to Let's Talk Ray Bradbury. I've got another short story review for you today in the form of The Beggar on O'Connell Bridge, written in 1961. In 1953, Ray Bradbury spent some time at the Royal Hibernian Hotel in Dublin writing a screenplay, and among the stories he wrote during that time was this story about a character who was also a screenwriter doing the same thing in the same hotel. This character, every time he leaves his hotel, is basically accosted by a bunch of different beggars, and he always ends up giving away his money to them because they are so good at their trade and are able to convince him that they need his help. Eventually, he becomes resentful of this. He surmises that they're all basically just, they deserve to be there, they're cheapskates, they're con artists, and he sort of feels bad that he can be taken advantage of by them. So he does his best to avoid them. But one day, on a bridge, playing a concertina and singing with the most beautiful voice, he meets a old man who stands out and plies his trade in the rain with no hat. And the author, the main character, he can't figure out, like, how can you be so poor that you can't afford even a hat? Like, everybody in Dublin literally has a hat, and this really troubles him. So his guilt gets to him, and he eventually buys a hat for this man. But he goes back the next day, and the man is gone, and he learns that the man, after many, many years of spending his time on this bridge, being ignored by people and never being given any money by anyone, he's basically given up. He jumps off the bridge and kills himself. So before the main character goes to leave the hotel and go back home to America, he has a conversation with the innkeeper about these people and about this man, and they basically discuss how poverty comes to be, how nobody wants to be in the position where they have to beg, but one day it's simple as I need a match, and then the next day it's I need a cigarette, and so on and so forth, down to money, down to every last aspect of your life. Basically, your dignity and your inhibition is stripped away, and these characters, this colorful cast of beggars, they're literally, they've been dehumanized by poverty. So when the man and his wife leave the hotels, he rushes out the door, he gives away all of his money and the hat that he had bought to the first person he sees. What's cool about this story is it is completely devoid of science fiction and fantasy elements. This is basically Bradbury doing a rare turn at completely realistic fiction. And he's written a number of stories like that, and really oftentimes overlooked by the establishment, and it's unfortunate because these are among his best works, and they prove that although science fiction and fantasy and the people who write this type of material is often looked down upon by the establishment, by the mainstream, by the literary world, he really was a great sort of straightforward literary fiction author too. And these are the types of stories that should definitely be taught in schools. I think the heart of this story is this message about how we rationalize not giving away money to the poor. We tell ourselves that these are all people who are there of their own accord and that they just want to cheat you and take from you. And we find ways to not look at the plight of people around us. And I'm from rural America, and I remember as a child, every once in a while, going to visit my aunt in Philadelphia, and we would occasionally ride into the inner city, and just to see that world, and to have out here, I've never seen somebody panhandle, and I always felt bad because for me, I was not anesthetized like this character was by seeing this sight every day. So for me, it's like when I see somebody sitting on the curb with a cup in their hand, I would feel an urge to help them. The other key element of this story thematically is how dignity is slowly stripped away from people as they have less and less and less in life. And I think we see this playing out today in the news, where you have, particularly here in America, you have this conservative Republican Party that basically preaches this story where anybody, and I'm not talking about just people who are on the streets, but people of my economic background, they sort of have this story that anybody who wants for something, who needs something, who needs help, from everything right down to like college education, or a little help with your bills that week or month, and they tell you this story that all of us are here of our own accord, that we don't work hard enough. That's why we aren't wildly successful, and these people just can't seem to get it through their head that is not the reality of the world. And in the case of these characters, these beggars on the O'Connell Bridge, they've been stripped of their dignity right down to the bone over many years, and they probably forgot how they actually got into that condition. And that's why cycles of poverty and hardship are so hard to break. And we could definitely learn a lot from this story right now, which it's a very relevant story, probably relevant for all time, but I feel in particularly the last few years, the way the country's been going here in America, this story, and this is the importance of art really, is art teaches you to learn empathy and to learn sympathy that sometimes get lost in the harsh realities of cold, hard, supposedly factual media, and then of course all this shit that's going on in the social media world. So very important story, great interesting cast of interesting beggars, which you need to read to see, believe. I could definitely see this story translated into stage play or screenplay, and that's probably been done. I didn't do the research to find that out, but it certainly hasn't been done recently. I'm actually get a little bit of shades of Les Mis in here as well, so if you like that sort of thing, great story. The Beggar on O'Connell Bridge, 1961, the master himself, Ray Bradbury. So check it out. All right, guys, thank you for tuning in once again. I've been doing these reviews maybe one a week recently. I've sort of been sidetracked by other things. Tonight, going back to do more episodes of Fear the Walking Dead as that show returns, so that will probably take up some of my time for doing this project, which is to review each story in this 100-story collection by Ray Bradbury. But eventually I will get through this entire story and it will join the archives here on Let's Talk, along with my collection of reviews of the complete H.P. Lovecraft. Also lots of Tolkien material, lots of Terry Goodkind material, and a few other odds and ends of short fiction and novel reviews. So trying to build a backlog of fiction reviews here on Let's Talk to go with everything else. So if you're into that sort of thing, please subscribe, and I will talk to you again soon.